Terry, are we live streaming?
Great. Do we have a 5-second countdown or just go?
You're ready to go.
Thanks, Terry. In accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19. Hang on I need to stop for a moment, Pat. Teresa Garrett is unable to get in. You're on that, Terry? Okay, thank you. In accordance with an act to implement provisions necessary to the health, welfare, and safety of the citizens of Maine in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency as enacted to read Section G-11 MRSA, Section 403A, public proceedings through remote access during a declaration of a state of emergency to COVID-19 and for 30 days following the termination of that state of emergency. The special board meeting will be held through Google Meet. The meeting will be live streamed and available for viewing at www.msad11.org. Members of the public wishing to make comment are invited to do so during the public comment sections of the meeting and may call 207-582-5346 or send an email to schoolboard, capital S, capital B, at msad11.org. Again, the phone number is 207-582-5346 or send an email to schoolboard, capital S, capital B, at msad11.org. In addition to the regular public comment section at the beginning of the board agenda, an additional public comment section has been added at the end of the agenda to provide the school board with the ability to answer questions sent to them during the meeting. We will now do the call to order pursuant to subsection 403-A of 1 MRSA, Maine Revised Statutes Annotated. We will now confirm that each member of the MSAD11 school board can hear and be heard. We will do this by calling the roll. Members present are asked to say yay. We ask all members to listen and report any audio difficulties when the roll is complete. Pat, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Becky Fless.
Yay.
Veronica Babcock.
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown.
Yay.
Teresa Garrett. Terry, were you able to get Teresa on? You're working on it. Matthew Lillybridge.
Yay.
Jim Lothridge.
Yay.
Nicole Madore.
Yay.
Matthew Marshall.
Yay.
Patrick Saucier.
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy.
Yay.
John Umland.
Yay.
Tony Beat.
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
Great. And is Teresa on yet? Okay. No, they're still working on it.
Administrative staff. Would you call
Okay.
that?
Sure. Andrea Dish.
Yay.
Angela Hardy.
Hello.
Chad Kempton.
Hello.
Christina O'Neill.
Hello.
Alicia Morris.
Hi.
Katie Gould.
Hi.
Karen Moody.
Hello.
Nate Stubert.
Hello.
Terry McGuire. Vicky Duguay.
Hello.
John LaPerriere.
Good evening.
I think that's everyone, and I'm Pat Hopkins, Superintendent of Schools.
Before we continue, Terry, I've had another text message with a screenshot from Teresa Garrett, whose screen says that she'll be allowed in when someone says it's okay, or whatever that message is. Oh, there you are, Carrie. Thank you. So we'll just continue on and she'll join as she can. We'll now stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Public comments for items on the agenda?
Yes. We received, our board members received numerous emails following the last school board meeting, and I'd like to read the names of everyone who sent emails to the school board. We received emails from Kristen Martin, Natalie Brand, Laurel Burgess, Cindy Ryder, Amy Langtang, Christy and Michael Fairservice, Buddy Langtang, Eric German. We received 2 from Eric, Jen Paul, Patrick Munzing, Liz Heath, Ray Heath, Quentin Martin, Carrie Arsenal, Scott McNeil, Amanda Bannister, Kristen Tripp, Andrea Gruber, Tammy Ham, Jennifer Boudreau, Christina Chadwick, and Karen Doyle. And then I've received an email tonight from Patrick Munzing, who has requested that I read his email to you this evening as part of public comment. To the members of the MSAD11 School Board, my name is Patrick Munzing, and I'm a resident of West Gardner and the head football coach at Gardner Area High School. I am writing to you today as both an advocate for students as well as a community member. As of yesterday, August 26th, the Maine Principals Association Sport Medicine Committee met and has recommended that all fall sports be offered. The committee is chaired by Dr. William Hines, who is a retired orthopedic surgeon and former chair for the National Federation of High School Sports Medicine Committee. Dr. Hines is nationally recognized. New guidelines would be required to make the fall sports season a safe activity for those volunteering to play. Dr. Hines stated, football may not be as risky as we believed it is, with 7 states having played at least 1 game. 1,000 high school football games have been played as of August 27th, 2020. There have not been any outbreaks in those states currently playing. It is well documented by medical journals that the mental health of these athletes will be greatly affected by not having the availability of fall sports. These effects are different than students who do not volunteer to participate in fall sports, as fall athletes have suffered a loss. Can someone mute? Thank you. Whereas students who choose not to participate in athletics or other interscholastic activities have not. The effects that have been documented have been everything from depression, suicidal ideations, and social isolation. Suicide claimed the lives of 27 young 15 to 24 years of age Maine kids in 2019. And he cites the source for that data. A very realistic fear is that these athletes will seek out other places to play, as they have done all summer. The larger impact is that this becomes an equity issue for kids that cannot afford the high cost to participate. These same kids who would normally receive free or reduced lunch at school no longer have a chance to play. It would also open up the ability for MSAD11 students to leave the district and play for other high schools that have decided to play a fall sports season. I know this is being discussed by athletes in MSAD11 if fall sports are not approved, and it's not just fall athletes. Please understand that each and every coach and student involved with the football program appreciates the countless hours you have all spent to best educate these student athletes. The Gardner Area High School mission statement is as follows. The Gardner Area High School community believes that education enriches people's lives. We promote personal improvement and excellence in academics, the arts, athletics, and extracurricular activities in a safe, respectful environment. The mission statement itself shows the value and importance of athletics in these kids' lives. All they're looking for is a chance to shine, and I can only hope they get it. Respectfully, Patrick Munzing. And just to be clear, all of the names that I read before, all of those individuals, their emails were in support of the board continuing to offer fall sports. I don't think I made that clear at first. I just said that they sent you emails, but they were all in support of fall sports. You're muted, Becky.
Thank you, Pat. Prioritization of items and alteration of the established agenda format sequence as needed.
Yes, I have one adjustment. I have an addition on page 2 under general information, D, team leaders. If you would add Jennifer Dearborn, special education.
Okay. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda as altered?
I make a motion to approve the agenda as altered.
I'll second it.
Motion by Veronica, and a second, please.
I'll second it.
Second by Matthew Marshall, thank you. Pat, would you please call the roll?
Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony Veet,
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
That's unanimous.
Great, thank you. General information as written, staff transfers and new
Yes.
hires, department chairs and team leaders.
Correct.
Okay, great. Nominations also as written?
No,
we-
nominations
no.
require your vote.
Yep, we
And
need to
so
vote on
so nominations, I'm recommending the hiring of Jim Burke as elementary guidance personnel who will work at Riverview and at LER. We have Sarah Quinn. We are recommending as the new nurse at the Gardner Regional Middle School. Megan Southerberg as a nurse. This would be a one-year position due to COVID, and this is at LER. We have Tracy Skates we're recommending as a new kindergarten teacher over at the Pittston Randolph Consolidated School. And we're recommending Phil Ferguson, who it will be the new special ed teacher over at the Helen Thompson School.
May I have a motion, please, to approve these nominations?
May-
Nomination as on.
Thank you, Tony. And a second, please?
Second.
Second by Veronica. Questions or comments? Congratulatory statements?
I have a question.
Yes, Jim.
With these two hires for the nurses, will we be fully staffed for nurses at each school?
With the addition of Megan, who is going to be at LER in a one-year position, yes, every building will have its own nurse.
Super, thank you.
That's really great. That's really great. Good question, Jim. Thank you. All right. No further questions. I will ask Pat to please call the roll.
Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony Beat,
Yay.
Quinton Martin.
Yay.
Great. Thank you. That was unanimous.
Thank you. An update on the return to school learning plan.
Yes, there's been so much work that continues to happen behind the scenes. And we have Angela Hardy, who is going to update the board tonight on the plans for remote learning and what that's going to look like for the families who have selected 100% remote learning. So Angela?
Thank you, Pat. I'm going to present my screen so that people can follow along as we go. Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So as Pat mentioned, we offered students whose families did not feel comfortable having them return to in-person learning, a fully remote learning option. And in our system, they're categorized as cohort C. We have 198 students enrolled in full remote learning for this coming term. We've asked families to enroll for 1 term, and then as we get closer to the 2nd term, they can reassess. And so what I'm going to share here is a little bit of the structure and the staffing that we have at this time. After this meeting, we'll continue to make progress on this plan, and then early next week, we will work on communicating this information directly with our enrolled students, and also be providing specific schedules and information about when to pick up their learning materials and their laptops, where to do that, and how that process will happen. And then shortly after that, they'll have direct contact from their instructors. So live interactive online learning will happen on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And independent continued learning and office hour support will happen on Wednesdays. This mirrors somewhat what's happening in our buildings, where we do have in-person learning happening in cohorts, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. Because of the dynamic of in-person learning, often having kind of greater intensity and collaboration in different ways, we feel like it's necessary to ensure that our remote learners have a full 4 days of learning. And you'll see how that plays out in the schedule. For grades 9 through 12, those students will live stream into their scheduled classes on all 4 days, and following the schedule for O Day or B Day. Because we will have in-person students attending, while we also have live streaming happening for the fully remote and the non-cohort in-person students, non-in-person cohort students. It should be actually a fairly seamless process for the high school remote students. They'll feel as much of the community as any other student. They'll have daily attendance. They'll use Google Meet to live stream in, and Google Classroom for their learning platform. For the middle school, we have kind of a parallel remote learning community. We'll have homerooms where students will virtually log in and connect with an educator in order to kind of get prompted to start their day. Students will have core classes, and there will be at some point, some allied arts integrated into their learning experience. They will use Google Classroom and Google Meet, and they will also have that 4-day-a-week structure with Wednesdays reserved for learning, independent learning, office hours, and support. Our middle school staffing is not yet secure, as you can see here, but we do have our humanities, which is our English and social studies courses set, and syllabi have been drafted, and we're in the process of refining those right now and refining the schedule. We do have math arranged for our 6th grade, and we're in the process of securing our 7th and 8th grade math instructor and our science instructor. Any student with IEPs will have some will have their, will have a special education support, and this is true for Title I in the younger grades. This is not a published schedule. This is a sample schedule just to see how things might play out for a student, and I thought it would be helpful in illustrating what we're trying to achieve here. We're not replicating an exact school day in the remote environment, but we are ensuring continued learning and progress with some focused instruction in each content area. In this case, the courses are the same period of time as the in-person courses. So there's the homeroom. This is a sample of how it may play out. There's a 45-minute class period, a small break, another class period, an elective of sorts, a break for lunch where students would not be live and not logged in, a science class, and then kind of a structured independent learning following up on those live instruction pieces that were provided earlier in the day. And then just the 7th grade side's another version of how that would play out. For kindergarten to 5th grade, we have to be especially sensitive to the amount of live screen time that our students engage in and how long they're able to sustain that at certain levels. So what I'm offering here is the commitment to live screen time. For example, kindergarten would be for 1.5 hours. That does not mean yet that they log in at 8 and conclude at 9:30. It may be broken up. We're refining the schedule so that parents can plan for it. But there would be an expectation there would be an additional hour of independent learning time that child would pursue using the Seesaw app and very structured interactive learning activities designed to help make progress. And those are similar to what our students will be using when they are not in school on the hybrid group. Our instructor in kindergarten will be Natalie Brand with 16 students. Grade 1 will be Tiffany Cockrell. She'll have 29 students. However, they'll be broken into smaller cohorts, so there will not be 29 students online at once. And she'll have some additional support. Grade 2 will have Deb Cloutier. She's coming out of retirement to help us with this process. She'll have 12 students. Grade 3 will be co-taught by Stephanie Marks and Ashley Morency. Grades 4 and 5 will be taught by Ken Esterbrook. And again, they will have some unique schedules. Not all those students, all 37 students will not be logged in at one time. We have developed a rotating schedule to enable him to have dedicated live instruction with some groups of students, and then while others are working through their independent practice, and then flipping that. And then, of course, the one piece that is variable is that we want to, outside of the core instruction, we want to make sure there will be some opportunities for interactive virtual library, some additional specials, certainly Title I and special education support if students qualify. And so that may be additional time scheduled into certain students' daily schedules, which they will have an opportunity to receive shortly. And here, this is at the upper level. The lower level will look a little different, but you can see that's a bit modified. This is just a sample. But for example, in grade 3, students would log in at 8:30 in the morning for their morning meeting. They'd remain on after morning meeting for math, so they would not have to change logins. And then they would move into kind of an independent learning. They would have been practicing and prepared for it through their math instruction. And then continue with that and then set themselves up for a snack or a body break, and then come back into the learning environment at 10:30 for science or social studies, and then move back into an independent learning to follow through with that work, and then later in the day come back for ELA and close out their day. That way we're not keeping students on their screen consistently and trying to transition from one content area to the other without time to really process what they learned. So those are just some examples of how that may play out. This is not the exact, I think that's all I have. Yep. But we are getting much closer, and we will be prepared for the launch on September 8th. And we will be prepared to communicate effectively with families early next week, so that they can have some clarity about how to organize their day with their students fully at home and be able to have an introduction and time to meet their teachers and get started in this virtual space. So do you have questions?
Questions for Andrea from board members? Angela?
Angela.
Angela.
I just want to say that looks really good, Angela. Nice work.
Angela, I have a question.
Yes, Jim?
How did you come up with the number of hours that are in elementary school? You started at 1.5 hours and you end up at, I think, 3 hours at the 4th and 5th grade level. Is there some data on that, or are you looking at some research that has prompted you to go in that direction?
Yes, it was in the spring when we were really looking into understanding what we could offer our children, and what we were prepared to offer our children. I started digging into the research on how much screen time we should expect from our early learners. And then we tried to go back to that and follow through over the summer to better understand. I don't have it cited here and I can't recall it at the moment, but it is from some certain national bodies and some of the schools nationally that have started remote learning. This is sort of what they're finding to be true as well. But I can certainly add that research component in as a citation in this document for future reference. But yes, we're trying to be really sensitive to the learning that needs to happen in a remote environment, and knowing that for us to be able to accomplish that, it's through live instruction on a screen, and it's a tricky balance.
I really appreciate the work you've done. This is a very good program, I feel. So thank you very much for the effort. I would love it if you could find that information and email it to all of us, all of the board members. I think it's something worth understanding, and I
Sure.
appreciate all your hard work. Thank you.
Sure. If you don't mind, it might not be till next week, though.
No problem at all. No problem. Thank you.
Angela, I
know
just
you're-
wanted to
I know
say
you're
thank you
busy.
again for all your hard work. But I have a concern. I this evening tried for almost an hour to join this meeting. How are we going to resolve that if that happens to the kids at home? Are they going to have one person that they contact? I mean, I was very frustrated as an adult trying to join the meeting. I can't imagine a child.
Yeah, that's a really great, I mean, it's good to lift that concern up. I can talk through some of the strategies that we've been thinking through. We have to still document this and communicate this with families. But one is every child will receive a laptop from our school community. In that, the child has an MSAD11 email account, and the computer for our early learners is set up with a program called Clever. And if I know Terry's on here, so if there's something she wants to add, feel free. So I don't know a lot about Clever, but what I do know is that when the computer opens up, there's like each child gets a QR code. It's like a little box with lots of squares, and the computer will read that and kind of log them in, and all they then have to do is click the program. So our youngest learners aren't going to have to like type in their name and their password and their email. So those are some strategies we use already in our schools. Anyone above kindergarten has used that already, but we will provide the written directions on how to do that. And if we're able to, maybe we can even provide some video tutorials, but I can't promise that until school starts. So we're a little overwhelmed with our video tutorials at the moment. So on top of that, they'll have their direct connection with their teacher who's pretty confident and competent in how to do this work, and there'll be some ability to reach out. And then we have tech staff at different grade levels that are always available during the school day, which is when these programs will be running, where there's opportunities. But I'm going to let Terry go into the details on some of this.
One of the plans is that the first few days of school, when the kids first get into the classrooms, they are taught how to enter while they're in front of us. And so that will be very helpful. That will be a big weight off, and then we'll deal with the remote people as we go. But training kids on how to get in and out of meetings is going to be really key for us.
Yeah, and I think, well, I'll just add, like, I know if last spring there was some frustration for students and families, but it was also when we were learning really quickly how to pivot. And we've had a lot more time over the summer, and these workshop days are giving us even more time to really work with our staff to be better prepared. So I'm hopeful that it's a smoother process.
Angela, I have a question and then just a comment. So thank you again for producing this. I think it's helpful just to see what the expectations are, right? And the timelines. How are you feeling? You mentioned middle school, you were still working out staffing there, but how about just in general about any substitutes that might be needed for these folks that are fully remote? Are they in sort of the bigger plan of how we're going to fill in any substitutes, not only for them, but for the whole district? Just any thoughts on that?
So generally, we have announced publicly that we are looking for long-term substitutes and daily substitutes. Our hope is with all substitutes that they'd be assigned to one building rather than multiple buildings, so that will keep them, within one group of students. We will be hosting a substitute training on the 2nd. September 2nd.
And then that's fine.
Yeah, and we're working with adult ed to co-host that with Josh Farr. And then we're going to work on a virtual version that will launch later in September. So as people close out their summers and then think maybe and see school running a little bit and feel more comfortable, they may want to substitute. So they'll be able to get some training. And that training will be both like traditional substitute training, but also certain ththings related to our COVID procedures and practices so that they feel confident entering the building. I will say we have, a healthy pool of individuals who have returned who can do some daily subbing and a few people who can do long term, but we certainly do not have enough. And so that is a concern. And, we would welcome anyone who has interest in serving our schools, acting as substitutes. There's an application process online, and it's linked on our website. And if that's a challenge for you to get to, reaching the central office at any time would be, we can walk you through that.
Perfect, thank you. And then just a comment, when you and Terry were talking about children and getting them prepared with their laptops, I have a kindergartner this year and a middle schooler. I know it'd be harder to do with the kindergartner, right? I mean, generally we help them get on and whatever. Any thoughts on maybe some of those parents that are sort of having that moment of panic, like, oh no, my kindergartner now has to be on the computer in school and at home, just to sort of ease any concern there?
So there's a couple of things going on that's different with kindergarten than other grade levels. I think it's K1 and 2. I can't remember about 3rd grade, honestly. We are going to actually keep the laptops at school for the first couple weeks, just so that every time they come in person, we know the laptop will be there. And it will give us more time to train the students so they become really much more comfortable in the learning platform. And parents don't then have to feel like they have to all of a sudden teach their kid how to do it while learning it themselves. So that's one strategy. The grades 4 and up will be able to start taking their laptop home right away, because we'll have some virtual learning going on, but they're more confident and we still will help them with the training, and they will be asked to bring them back every time they come in person. The other strategy is with K through 3, or pre-K, I'm sorry, pre-K through 3. Our online learning platform is called Seesaw. So we'll be sending materials out to families on how they can get connected on their own device for the family side of it, not the student learning side. But by doing that, they'll get access to communication more efficiently and effectively. They'll learn how Seesaw works for the parent side. And they'll start becoming a little bit more comfortable. And it's a choice. They don't have to do it, but they can put it on their phone, or they can put it on a laptop or a desktop. There's different ways. And then we'll have some similar tutorials for how this works on the Seesaw level and on the Google Classroom level, which is grades 4 through 12, which we did not have in the spring, these tutorials, but we will. And those will be on our return to school planning website eventually. We have them, we've not posted them yet.
Perfect. That was a lot, but very useful. So thank you very much.
It feels like a lot when all of a sudden you feel in charge of your kids' online learning. That
Yeah,
they've never.
exactly, right? I know. Thank you so much. You always make it easy to understand and follow, so I appreciate it.
So Angela, this is Matt. I just wanted to say that I think you and your team hit another home run. You know, with all the resources being pulled in several different directions, I think you all have done a wonderful job supporting the remote learning option, and I just wanted to thank you personally. Thank you.
Thanks. I do want to make sure I get to be the public face here, but I do want to make sure that everyone is really clear that this was impossible without a team. I can't say that enough. I don't know how many times I've called different members of my team asking them to think more creatively and divergently while they're under stress. And so that's the entire tech department, our entire administrative team, and different members of the staff, in fact, really taking a pause and saying, you know what, I can do this remote teaching and I'm excited about it. And this is going to be a good fit for me. And that is brave in this world. So I'm really, really proud of our community.
Becky, can I add, let me see. Can I just add a little clarity on something for members of the public in terms of distribution of our laptops? It is our intention that on Tuesday, September 8th, we will be distributing laptops to students in cohort A, grades 3 up or grade 4 up, and the students in cohort B will not be receiving their laptops until Thursday, September 10th. So as we think about the calendar and what we talk about in terms of the calendar, it means cohort A, their first day of school will officially be September 8th. But because the cohort B students will not have their laptops until the 10th, they will not be able to do any remote learning until the 10th. So their first day will technically be September 10th. So I just wanted to be really clear with that so that there was no confusion.
Thank you, Pat.
Great. Other questions from board members? Or comments? Yes, Tony.
Thanks. Yeah, I just had a couple of hopefully quick ones. And just to echo the other members, other directors' sentiments, Angela, great job. Thank you for your very comprehensive overview of almost an entirely new curriculum model. And your team, very, very nice. Do you think, I'll put you on the spot here, do you think we would continue to use this? Is this something we will continue to put forward? And I have two other questions. How will attendance be managed? And if kids have questions, students have questions during remote days, how are those questions going to get resolved?
Okay. Will we continue? I don't know. We're going to see, we're going to continue this commitment for as long as we need to this year. However, I think as a board, this is kind of an interesting opportunity to learn and see how successful we can be in the remote environment over time as we get better at it. And maybe snow days will look different and be school days instead. So that's just something to, put in your pocket for later. Attendance. When in person, we will follow the same traditional attendance procedures using PowerSchool, where students attendance is taken either daily or by course, depending on your grade level. When students are remote at the high school level, their attendance will be taken in the same manner as if it was in person. The teacher will check who's on remote and take attendance. At the K-8 level, no, at the 4-8 level on remote days, students will log into a classroom, a Google Classroom that's designated, we believe, for their homeroom or advisor. Or things are fluid. This is our plan at the moment. And there will be a task that they need to accomplish. And that will help us recognize that they are logging in for the day. And that will help us manage attendance. Now, there's some flexibility on what time that child logs in on a remote day. So if some of you are concerned about your middle school student waking up a little bit later on these remote days, but knowing that they will still learn, there's a tiny bit of flexibility there, and we'll make sure we communicate that. Attendance is different than active participation. So there's an attendance feature we want to monitor and stay on top of and really make sure we're not missing any children. And then active participation, that's part of your course experience. So both things are being monitored, but in different ways. And then for pre-K to 3, attendance will be conducted through the use of our Seesaw app. And that's our newest learning platform. So we're actually working out the kinks right now on how that happens, especially with our youngest learners, and the flexible timeframes some of our parents need on those non-in-person days because of daycare and stuff like that. So we're working out the kinks right now. We'll have the details on that early next week. And then, what was the third question?
If a student has questions on the remote day. Awesome job. Thank you.
Yeah, so on Wednesdays, there'll be established office hours. We just set the timeframes for that today. Teachers will then organize that into time slots, and they'll publish those. And that way, on Wednesdays, students have a direct point of contact, or families, depending on the age level. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, or Mondays and Tuesdays, it'll have to be done virtually through their Google Classroom platform and or email. And then when teachers either have preps or before and after school, they'll be responsive. So it won't be kind of like an immediate live time response, but I'm confident our teachers are trying to monitor and manage their support.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jim Lothridge had a question.
Yeah, I was just, when Tony was talking, it popped into my mind. How strong is Google Classroom as far as the bandwidth that it has? If every school in the country is logging on to this, what happens if it crashes? Do we have
Terry,
a
you're up. She's got to change.
Terry, where are you going?
She's like, I'm out. No. Google Classroom's going to be fine, I think, but Google Meet, where we're doing that live interactive session, Terry's going to talk to you a little bit about our bandwidth, I'm sure, but that is an area that we're looking into seeing how this plays out, and it's also why we're not live streaming K-12.
We got really lucky because we updated every single network in our building last year with all new access points and switches. Yep. So that was a really great thing that we did. The other thing is Google has done a lot of work this summer with trying to solidify their networks that they have. We do have a plan to try to help out. The plan is that we try it with the network configured exactly like it is now. If we find that our network is really lagging and we're having a hard time, what we're going to do is we will give the teachers more bandwidth than the kids. We will block some of the YouTube. We'll slow some of the like Netflix. Sometimes people use Netflix in school, teachers, to show the videos or whatever. So what we'll do is we'll start taking the personal devices off, and I think we should be all right.
I'm less concerned about our own network. I think our staff will handle everything there as need be. I am concerned about, there are a lot of bad actors out there that may try to cause all kind of havoc across the country with a denial of service attack or something like that. I'm worried about, do we have a backup plan if that hits and we can't get our students on? And maybe nobody across the country can. That's the only thing I'm worried about.
There's like 140 million educators and students per day using Google for education. So we're going to be in good company if that happens. And I think that if it does happen, we're going to end up going back to packets until Google gets it fixed.
Thank you very much.
Google is a huge company worth billions of dollars. Hopefully they can figure it out.
I'm more worried about us than them.
Angela, I have two questions for you, unrelated to each other. The first one, cohort C, the full remote option, is that available for pre-K students or just K-12?
Just K-12.
Okay. My other question is, the other cohorts, A and B, when they're attending in person on their days, is that a regular school day in terms of hours, the 8:30, for elementary, 8:30 to 3-ish, whatever?
Same as always.
Always. Okay. Thank you.
The only difference is they have a few extra mass breaks built in and travel time built in and things like that. But yeah, a normal day.
Okay. Becky, I think we're good. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Great, thank you. Any other questions for Angela? Terrific. Do we need a vote? We already voted.
You've already voted on the plan. So these are additional details within the plan. It's entirely up to you. I mean, if you want to vote, that's fine, but I'm not sure that it's necessary.
Is the board satisfied? Nodding? Thumbs up?
Okay.
All right then, let's continue. Discussion about fall athletics, consideration of the MPA Association guidance.
Okay, so at your last meeting in the beginning of August, there was a kind of an unexpected conversation regarding the status of fall athletics. And it was decided at that time that we would wait to hear what the recommendations were from the Maine Principals Association. Unfortunately, that recommendation has just come out like 30 minutes ago, or well, 5 o'clock. So we haven't really had a chance to process all of it, but Nate has been on top of it, and Nate actually has some information that he's prepared to share to you about athletics. So Nate, can I turn it over to you?
Yes, okay. So for some reason, my mouse isn't working right now. So I'm going to share a screen. I'm going to assume, do I share my entire screen? I think that's what I do. Can you all see that?
No.
No. Okay, let's try something else. about that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
good. All right. So just to give a little history about what's taken place over the last few months or so. The Maine Principal Association has worked countless hours with the Sports Medicine Committee, the Interscholastic Management Committee, all of the fall individual sports committees and athletic directors around the state to try to come up with a plan to allow our athletes to return to play safely. So that's primarily the reason why it's taken so long to get to where we are today. Yesterday, the Maine Principal Association met with the Sports Medicine Committee and Dr. Hines, and the recommendation from the Sports Medicine Committee was to move forward with all fall sports, and that was voted on unanimously. Today, the MPA met with the Interscholastic Management Committee, and that vote was also to move ahead with fall sports unanimously. Now, with some provisions and with some modifications for each sport. Those modifications, although some of them have been mentioned, have not been released yet. So there's definitely modifications for every single sport. For example, football, it was talked about broadening the sidelines to allow for more space with players on the field or players who are on the sidelines. Soccer talked about limiting the amount of players that are in the penalty box during corner kicks. Volleyball talked about volleyball players wearing masks during competition. Those are just some of the things, but there were modifications to almost every single sport. Cross country were staggered starts. Golf was face masks and spacing, which they typically are anyway. So those were some of the modifications that were spoken about. So I think there was a misconception out there for those of you who were following the recommendation by the MPA that we would have a decision today by the MPA, and that's not necessarily the case. The MPA is now putting the recommendation forward, and it needs to be approved by the Maine Department of Education, the Department of Human Services, the governor, and the superintendents for approval. So that process is going to take some time. Mike Burnham, the executive director of the MPA, is cautiously optimistic that process will be done by the start of the fall season, which is scheduled to start September 8th. So that's when we can start having preseason tryouts, is September 8th. And he was cautiously optimistic that process would be completed by then. So, but with that information, I wanted to give you essentially the pods that we have created. I think I mentioned last school board meeting that within our conference, the Kennebec Valley Athletic Conference, we have formed pods. And those pods, I've been asked not to release those pods specifically for each sport, but I can tell you the amount of games, we don't have a schedule yet for each sport, but I can tell you the amount of games that will be played in each county. And that's kind of what I put together. I thought this might be helpful information for you. So with boys and girls soccer, with golf, let's start with golf. All of our matches will be played in Kennebec County. Boys and girls soccer, we'd have 18 games in Kennebec County, 2 games in Lincoln County. Field hockey would have 9 games in Kennebec County, 1 game in Somerset County. Volleyball would have 7 games in Kennebec County and 1 game in Cumberland County, and 1 game in Penobscot County. Cross country, even though we don't host meets, there would be 1 meet in Somerset County, 1 meet in Androscoggin County, and 1 meet in Kennebec County. The football pods have not been determined at this point, so I can't comment on that. And then to break it down, games and contests by county. So we would have essentially 83.3% of our games in Kennebec County. And in parentheses, just for informational purposes, I just put the number of active COVID cases in those counties currently. I think Kennebec County is down to 14 today. We currently have 48 games scheduled on our fall schedule right now. That doesn't include football. So we have 40 of those games are in Kennebec County, and then you can see the others. 3 are in Somerset, 1 is in Androscoggin, 2 are in Lincoln, 1 is in Penobscot, and 1 is in Cumberland. So the one that's in Cumberland, that's at Brunswick High School, and that's a volleyball match, just so you know. I also outlined the safety precautions that we would have in place here at Gardner. Some of these have been adopted from the MPA summer workout conditioning phases, and there will be others that will still be determined based on the MPA's recommendations, which certainly haven't been released yet. But you can take a look at those. We've been utilizing most of these during our summer workout programs. And the last few, for instance, bus capacity will be capped at 23. We'll have staggered practice times. We won't allow athletes to use our locker rooms. We'll have masks at practices. And then we certainly have precautions in place, or we certainly will, if any athletes test positive for COVID during the course of the season. And lastly, I just wanted to give you what our anticipated team numbers would be for this fall season. You can take a look. Boys soccer is 36, girls soccer is 35, cross country is 15, cheerleading is 15, field hockey is 28. Football is 65 to 70, but I just put 65. Golf is 12 and volleyball is 30. So it's 236 students, which makes up roughly 38% of our student population. And that, there's my back, or did I stop sharing?
No, you did not stop sharing.
Okay.
There you
How
go.
about now? We good?
That's better. That's
Okay.
better.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
Thank
All right.
you.
So without any, formal recommendation or approval from the MPA, that's the information that I have right now.
Alyssa, and you're on mute.
May I ask you a question? Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you. Nate, thank you for that presentation. I know you often say it, but I just want to reiterate, your numbers you're using are for high school only, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. And then, but the general guidelines, obviously, like you've said before, would be shared across the district. Any concern about like those outlying games that are in, say, Cumberland County, just because it's been a higher risk area? Like if you didn't have enough students and you're not able to play anyway, would that be sort of a consideration during this pandemic? And I'm just thinking, just in general, also, if you can only put 23 kids on the bus,
Right.
the logistics of some of that too.
Sure. So I'll talk to the first question, which is, I feel that working with athletic directors in our conference, working with the MPA, working with the sports medicine committee, I feel that all of our schools are going to have an abundance of caution for when we play athletics. We are going to make sure that we adhere to all of the safety guidelines and then some. So I don't feel, obviously there's an inherent risk with whatever we do. In sports, there's going to be an inherent risk. There's always going to be a risk that we take. But we are certainly going to take every precaution necessary to mitigate the spread of COVID and hopefully prevent the spread of it amongst our athletes. Now, as far as transportation is concerned, yes, that's definitely going to be a concern with away games. It's something that we will certainly work on when that time comes, but it's right there in the forefront of our minds and how we're going to handle transporting our athletes in the afternoon and on weekends for away games.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of the things that we've needed to talk about, Nate, is just that, the transportation piece.
Right.
I have a couple of questions. Will varsity athletes be only traveling, or will they be JV traveling?
Well, we talked about that. Pat and I talked about that earlier, and I think that varsity athletes would take precedence initially. We would do whatever we possibly could to have some JV games. So for instance, JV games could possibly take place on Saturdays. And that's something that we've talked about within our conference, that possibly JV games happen on Saturdays. We know that schools are going to be limited for transportation. I know one school that can only transport on Wednesdays and Saturdays. So they have to have their away games on Saturdays. Hopefully we're not in that same boat. But we understand that there are certain restrictions for transportation during this time. So we'll try to do whatever we possibly can to get our athletes to where they need to go. And we might need to come up with some creative ways to do that.
And that was also my second. You probably already know my questions, but that was one of my second. I'm so sorry.
No worries.
Let's go. My dogs are barking. I'll come back. Matthew Lillibridge had a question.
Okay.
Hey, Nate, you mentioned about COVID testing or anything like that. Is there any testing going on? Or is it just when someone becomes symptomatic that they go to the health clinic and get the stab your brain test?
So there's no official testing going on, but we do have all of our athletes, they're required to fill out a self-evaluation COVID questionnaire every single day before participating in that day's practice. We would carry the same practice along during fall sports as well. I was involved in a meeting the other day where apparently Yale University has come out with a very quick test. It's a test that they're using for athletes right now that you have the results within minutes. It's about $10 a test right now, and they're hoping to mass produce it so it becomes a little bit less expensive. But right now it's not available for mass use. That's certainly something that we would keep an eye on moving forward. But we're doing the COVID checklist every single day for all of our athletes right now. If they don't fill those out, they don't practice. And if they have any symptoms whatsoever, cold related or not, they don't practice.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I'm just because I'm now the director of health screening at Colby College, and we're doing 1,200 tests a day, and the whole NESCAC is holding off on fall sports and stuff like that, and we've got a million more controls in place. So when I got my concerns just like everybody else, and I understand how important sports are. Just hopefully everyone is doing the right thing, and not just at our school, but all the other schools that they're going to be competing against.
Correct. And we have athletic directors meetings quite often these days. We have another one tomorrow at 9:00 in the morning. And I have full confidence that all of our athletic directors are going to be overseeing all of our fall sports and making sure that everybody's doing the right thing. And I don't know if you were aware, the first football game that took place in the country this year was in Utah. And there were 1,500 people at the stadium, and they weren't necessarily following the guidelines that they had set forth. The athletic director got on the PA and essentially stopped the game, threatened to stop the game unless everybody followed the recommendations and the guidelines. And they all fell in line, and the game continued. So those are certainly things that we would certainly do here, and I know that other schools would do as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Back to my question about transportation. I apologize for my barking dogs. They love sports. So back to transportation. Just as soon as possible, as soon as we have any information, one of my concerns is how many buses are we going to need? And because we can only have 22 or 23 athletes, big people on buses. So there's that. And then additionally, there's the cost of the transportation because of extra buses. Then there's the deep cleaning so that all the buses are ready for school the next day if it's during the school day, if the games are during the school day. And then do we have enough staff? Do we have enough bus drivers, and do we have enough staff to actually make this happen in a way that's equitable? And I know we have to do that because of Title IX, but do we really have all of that? And as we are preparing and making our schedule, we must, I would think, be having that sort of at the forefront, right next to safety, right next. Is everyone well? And then how are we going to pay for it? Where's that money? If there's extra money, where will that come from?
Right. I have to have a conversation with Gabe to find out what the driver status is, and that's typically what we do at the beginning of every sports season to see where we're at. The game schedules have been reduced, so typically in a season where you'd have 16 soccer games, we have 10. So that would mean 5 away, 5 home. Volleyball is the same thing, and field hockey is the same thing. So they have 10 games this year. Football is down to 6, so there'll be 3 away games. In a normal year, we would take 2 buses to an away game for football. We would take, a full bus for soccer. We'd take a full bus for field hockey and a full bus for volleyball. What may have to happen is we have to reduce the size of the rosters, or reduce the amount of athletes that we take on away trips. And then there's the discussion about the possibility of parents transporting for a year. That's a discussion that we'll have, once we cross that bridge.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that we're looking at, and I'm sure we can make it happen. It's just we're gonna have to be creative and think outside the box. And it's an extraordinary year for sure. So.
Yes, it is, and the devil will be in the details.
Right.
Okay, thank you. We do have a couple questions in the chat box. I think Teresa had one, and Veronica had one. So we'll, and I think Matthew was taken care of, Matthew Lillibridge. So Veronica first, and then Teresa.
I was just curious why there were no guidelines for cheering. Was that an oversight of the MPA, or did you
No,
put it?
it's not. Cheering, they are putting cheering into a different department right now, and so they are putting cheering. They're categorizing cheering with spectators, is what I believe. So that's kind of a wait and see. We'll see what happens with cheering, but they did that intentionally. I was watching that, and I was kind of curious myself as to why they didn't cover that. And then the question was asked, and that was Mike Gordon's response.
Teresa?
One of my questions you did answer, and it was about transportation and parents helping out with that. My other question was the numbers that you gave of the athletes, does that include both the JV and the varsity?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that includes our total number of athletes per sport.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And those are this year's numbers, not last year's numbers.
Correct. Those are this year's numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. You may already know this, Nate. We had I was part of a meeting this morning, and it was a little bit spirited about this topic. My personal frustration is just in that I have served on the educational, the DOE org committee since June, and the MPA has been part of that committee since June. And the districts have done so much work. The educators at the table have done so much work, and that the MPA has really, really dragged this out and actually didn't consult, as Mike said this morning, they didn't consult the medical committee until last week. And so it really, after a very long period of time, a very stressful period of time for our administrators and our staff, now everybody's, it's kind of the hurry up, here we go. And I found really, really frustrating. I'm a sports mom, and I love athletics. I love football. I love lacrosse. I love all sports, and I love what it provides for our student athletes. I really wish that the MPA had been, and I said this morning, I wish they had been more forthcoming and had visibly shown, and they may have had the same level of commitment, but visibly shown the same level of commitment to this happening seamlessly and flawlessly all the way through the process. It really would have been helpful, because now we have a short period of time to accomplish a lot of work.
Right.
And that's difficult on everyone, including you.
Right.
Everybody's got to now scurry and make sure we've got it all covered.
Right. Because this year, and typically what we would do in any normal year is there would be one athletic director in our conference that would create a schedule for a specific sport.
Right.
This year, all those schedules that were created, and we would typically have all our schedules done 6 months ago for the fall. And now we're waiting. We've created these pods that, essentially make up the regionalized scheduling, but it's going to be on the plate of every athletic director from every school to create our own schedules within those pods once we say yes.
Right.
So that's going to be time consuming.
And that just feels really stressful, added already to the additional stress of just going back to school and making sure everybody can get there and be there. And once everyone's there, we want them to be able to stay there.
Right.
So it just adds to the stress.
Yeah.
So that was my personal frustration.
Yeah, and we're all confident we can get it done. I mean, nobody likes to work under these time constraints,
Mhm.
but I think everybody's willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen.
Mhm.
Nate, is the MPA confident they're going to be able to get enough referees? Because, I mean,
Well,
I've talked to people that ref, and the unknown, the older population, the worry about contracting, they're running with masks on. It just really feels like Becky said, very, and again, I want these kids to play like nobody's business.
well, as long as your father and Ben are out there officiating, we should be all set.
They need guidelines too, and I feel like that there's just this trickle down effect that the MP didn't seem to really think of, and it is frustrating as we're being led to make this decision.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel good, quite frankly.
So I think with anybody who's been involved in anything COVID related, any administrator or school board member or anybody who's been involved in any sort of planning, there are always these other layers that don't get considered or you don't really think about. And that's another layer for athletics is officials. So there's transportation, there's officials, there's safety guidelines, there's a ton of other things that need to be considered moving forward. And that's certainly a consideration. You know, I talk with our field hockey assigner quite often because she's right here in the district. And that's a concern of hers too, is will we have enough field hockey officials? The hope is that we can create a schedule where we don't put a huge demand on officials because we have fewer games, because we may only have varsity games, because we have limited time and so on and so forth, that we're hoping that is not as big of a concern as it would be if we were playing a full schedule of 16 games. But we won't know for sure until that's the thing is we won't know for sure until the schedules are created, and then they go to the assigners, and then the assigners can take a look at the schedules and say, all right, we're all set, or no, we're not all set.
Right.
So we would just either reschedule games at that point or cancel some games.
Jim has a question, and then John Umland.
My question was, from what your presentation indicated, we still have to get DOE buy-in on this, don't we?
Yes, that's correct.
From the DHHS and
that's correct.
And how confident are you that you will get buy-in from them, and when will we get buy-in?
So Mike Burnham, who's the executive director of the MPA, seemed to think he was cautiously optimistic that we would have an answer by September 8th, which is the first day of fall sport. So that's the hope, that we have an answer by then. I don't know. We were told that we would have a response or a recommendation last Tuesday, and then we were told we were going to have a recommendation today. So it's just, I don't know. I hope that's the case.
It's very hard to make a decision if we don't know whether we're getting buy-in and an agreement from the DOE and all the other agencies and the government.
I think we are, given the information that we've been given so far. I feel that the Department of Education will be in favor, but I certainly can't speak for them. But that's just the feeling that I do get.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Nate, thank you for everything and all the effort and work you've put in. One question I want to ask for Tony, because it didn't get answered, was what is happening with the Gators buffs?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so the NFHS, which is the National Federation of High School Sports, has said that Gators cannot be used for football. And the reason for that is that it's the injury risk. So if football players get tackled with the Gators on, it could cause injury to the larynx. So that's why Gators, we can use them for practices, but we can't use them for competition. Okay. And instead, initially when COVID first started, and there were discussions about sports being played way back in April or May, you could easily attach a full clear face shield to a football helmet. And the NFHS said no, that they didn't recommend that because that could be a safety hazard with players getting their fingers caught. Now they've changed their tune and they're saying yes. So if we were to be allowed to have fall sports, then that's something that I would look to purchase is full clear face shields for our football players. And there are two companies that they recommended. So that's something that we'd certainly look into as well.
Great. Tony, does that answer? And then I can.
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure Tony got addressed there first. Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Actually, there was another part to that, which is, and thanks for bringing it up, John, and definitely Nate, thanks for your attention to this, and I really appreciate you shepherding this through and answering our question. The other thing I was hearing about Gators is that they're less effective in managing the air that are coming out.
Yeah, and that was a study that was done by Duke University, and that was big news a couple of weeks ago. The thing that I questioned was the fact that they were calling them fleece skaters, and that I understand that the material plays a lot into it. So if you're talking about fleece versus some microbial other sort of material, then I think it would make a difference. But there hasn't been any sort of official announcement on the fleece's material in other sports, and the recommendation here in our district for teachers and stuff has been, I think it's, Pat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's been Gators are okay. We're not going to say that they're not okay at this point.
The CDC and the DOE, they're not providing us any guidelines or expectations regarding what staff members or students wear. They're just saying they need to be wearing face coverings, masks. It could be gaiters. So we are not indicating whether someone should be wearing one particular face shield over another.
Jim, a gaiter goes over your head, and it looks like a big sort of cowl turtleneck thingy, and you pull it up over your face. And it's snug fitting.
So Nate, if I can consolidate a couple things real quick. You said that 2 buses were taken generally in a normal football season. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And based on the number that the state is currently at for outdoor events,
right,
at 100, essentially we'd be taking 2 buses again this year.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. The face mask part of it, I mean, essentially the hockey players wear the exact same mask when they're playing hockey. Is that fairly accurate?
That's fairly accurate, yes.
I mean, it's not like a health risk because their faces are being covered up.
Right.
Okay.
And just to elaborate on what you just said, John, is we still have to abide by the 100-person limit rule outside. So you bring up a good point. When you have football, especially because football tends to have larger rosters, that you could easily make up that 100-person limit with 2 football teams, coaches, and officials. And then there's the 40-foot distance rule before you can have another group of 100 people. And so when we're talking spectator participation, I didn't think that the MPA was going to weigh in on that, but the notes from yesterday's meeting indicate that they will. So I'm curious to see what that's going to look like when it finally gets released. So who knows what that's going to look like, but that's certainly a consideration.
And I did get to watch part of the meeting today, and it was brought up, and they said that they would abide by the 100-person limit. So,
right. And we know. Go ahead.
Just thinking of it from a transportation perspective, it doesn't add an additional bus.
Right.
Football being our largest participant sport, when you talk field hockey versus football, as far as strict player numbers is what I'm trying to get to. The other question, and I know, all of the conversations, because MPA, obviously they it's all high school sports. Has there been any conversation with athletic directors in the area regarding middle school sports or athletics as well?
There has, and we're going to wait to see what happens with high school sports.
Okay, right. So any kind of approval, but is there the ability, like, are athletic directors generally on the same side that if high school sports does happen, that then middle school sports would also happen?
If possible, yeah. Yes,
yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. But then we get into the logistics of it, transportation, field space, officials, all that kind of stuff. And is it going to be possible to have sub-varsity athletics at the high school level, and is it going to be possible to have middle school athletics?
And I just noticed Veronica had that question too, but 23 kids on a bus, 23, that's 46, right? You'd have to subtract a couple for coaches, but there's what, 4 to 6 refs at a game too? So by the time you make all of those eliminations, it's still only 2 buses.
Right. And then you got to make room for equipment and all that stuff as well. So yeah, we'd certainly have to make some adjustments for our rosters. There's no doubt.
Thank you very much, Nate. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, John.
Other board members?
I have a question. Speaking to our one of my favorite coaches, John Wolfgram, he at Chevrolet, they're going to play flag football. Is that any consideration? If you can't have contact, have you considered flag? Because that is what a few southern schools are going to do.
Yeah. So if we didn't have, if the MPA or various organizations or agencies said no sports, then we would look into developing some sort of intramurals here. I don't know what that would look like yet, but it's something we'd certainly look into. There has not been a conversation of going to flag football in this part of the state. It's only been down in the southern part of the state where there are higher numbers.
Where they have so many cases.
Correct.
Which is of concern. I don't know if and I do see your hand, Pat, which is of concern. I don't know if our football team would be traveling into Cumberland County.
And I don't know either, because we don't have the pod for football yet.
Right. And so that might be a consideration. And one of the things that I did bring up this morning in the meeting was that it could be great for the MPA, just on the off chance that this doesn't fly on through, to have a best case scenario and a worst case scenario with something in the middle, so that we can adjust, and we don't just have to. Nobody wants to just not have sports. That's not the point. But soccer, for instance, and I don't understand soccer very well because I'm not a soccer parent, but apparently the soccer rules have changed something about a slide rule so that the kids don't fall on top of each other, and so they've changed some of the rules to make it safer. So it takes it from a red sport to a blinking yellow light, Mike called it.
Right. So
I would love to see football be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I don't mean to cut you off, Becky, but that's the case. Is there, and that's what I mentioned earlier. There are a lot of modifications to all of the sports. Some have more modifications than others. We haven't seen that full list of modifications yet. They've been outlined in some of the reports that have been sent out by reporters who were at the meeting yesterday, and I've seen some of them. But apparently they went into executive session, and we were expecting to see more once the final report is out. So there are modifications in every sport to attempt to make the sport safer. And when you talk about slide tackling in soccer, that's one of them. Slide tackling will be allowed, but only on a one-on-one basis. It won't be when you can go into groups of others, and that therefore essentially creating a pig pile. They don't want that. So I've seen things like that. So I'm curious to see what the rest of it looks like.
Thank you, Nate. Pat?
A couple things. One, in terms of transportation, I just want to make sure that the board does understand we're currently down 2 bus drivers. And so we have 2 permanent subs. Those permanent subs are now they will have to drive regular routes. So we're not going to have a backup system. And those who are driving are going to have the additional cleaning that's going to be required. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean in terms of their hours, and whether they're going to exceed 40 hours a week as a result of some of the additional work that they're going to have to do to sanitize the buses. So I just wanted to make sure that the board understands that we do not have a full load of drivers at this point. Our capacity is down. And then I thought it might help to kind of move this conversation as to where are we going. Clearly, we've had a lot of communication from the public. People would like the board to make a decision regarding athletics. We have many students, many families who are waiting to know how you feel about having fall athletics this year. So to start the conversation, to really decide on how to proceed, I would like to throw out a recommendation. And I would throw out a recommendation that you accept the recommendation that's put forth by all of the entities that Nate went through and described. So, kind of stepping back, when the administration developed the learning plan that you approved, I heard the board talk about the fact that you knew administrators were doing the work, that we were in the weeds. We understood every single little aspect of that plan, what worked, what didn't work. And because we became so intimately familiar, we did our research. You know, Angela talked earlier about some of the research she did on remote learning, that you trusted that we were going to put forth a plan that was appropriate. I suggest that we do the same thing in regards to athletics, that you have the MPA who has consulted with physicians, with the medical field. They have now made their recommendation. That recommendation is going to the DOE. That recommendation is then going to DHHS. That recommendation is then going to the governor. So we have a lot of people who have more expertise and more knowledge than we do, looking at this and making a recommendation based on research, based on information that you and I just don't have access to. And so I want to trust that whatever recommendation that they put forth, that it is with the best interest of students in mind, and that they will make sure that they identify and put forth all of the safety protocols that absolutely must be in place, that we must follow in order to hold fall sports. So I would put that forth as a recommendation for the board to consider.
Conversation. Board members.
I agree. Thank you, Pat.
I have a comment.
Sure, Jim.
I agree that we should probably try to have fall sports. I'm a little leery about it, but I think we should go forward. I don't think the buses should be anywhere in our consideration. I know it's a problem, but problems can be solved. I'm concerned about health issues and making sure we're doing it safely. If that's solved, I'm all for it. I want to see it happen. I'm not going to worry about a bus. If I have to, I used to drive bus myself. I'll drive one of them. I'm a volunteer, so I have to go get my license again. But anyways, we should go forward if we can. And I agree, following the recommendations. I would have liked to have seen those recommendations, read those recommendations myself. I'm a kind of a slow learner, and I like to grab it in my hands and figure it out. But as far as I'm concerned, we ought to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
I agree. I also have a question from a parent asking about the soccer games. Would they be held at the Prairie Street School with the groundbreaking taking place?
So that's a good question, and that the answer to that question has not been resolved as of yet. Right now, we are looking at having all of our home games take place at Hoke Field, which means all of our soccer, all of our football, and all of our field hockey games take place at Hoke Field, primarily for crowd control purposes.
My understanding was that are you talking about the Boys and Girls Club field?
Yeah, and that's not happening this year. That's not going to happen until next year.
For at least a year, maybe.
Because I had a parent concerned as to where the soccer games would be played.
Yeah.
So that
you.
project is on hold at this point.
And I would suggest, Teresa, if a parent communicates with you about that type of concern, that you redirect them to the administration and they can help answer that question for them. Okay?
Okay, they just actually sent a message to me during the meeting, thinking that I could bring that question about for them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Basically anything I was gonna say, Pat said. I was just, from my perspective, if the MPA and the Sports Medicine Committee have so far gone in the direction of being pro high school sports, then who are we to stand in the way now? I think that at least trying to have fall sports is way more important than canceling them before they even start. I obviously, as a student athlete, I want to play. I know that my coaches and teammates and peers that not even just on the football team, all over the place want to play. And I just think that we can be, at least we shouldn't stop it before it even starts, I guess is what I'm saying. So I appreciate it.
This is Nancy. And I actually think that if people feel ready, I would be happy to make a motion to follow Pat's recommendation. You can help me with the verbiage, Pat, but I'd like to make that motion.
Can we, before you do that, Pat, Tony had his finger up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I'm generally in line with that, to support that return to fall sports. And I appreciate, Pat, what you're saying. It's really, you're framing this so that it's consistent with how we have done the return to school roadmap. So we're using the data and the research and the expertise across the field, so to speak. And so I appreciate your frame there. I did want to double check on a couple of things. At one point, I think we talked about maybe having, I think I heard someone say that if we had students, if we were playing fall sports, student athletes would then potentially go to remote learning. Is that a thing, or is that too exclusionary? And then could we just clarify how it's going to work for attendance for crowds? For how's that going to work tape-wise or whatever on the stadium bleachers? And then, sorry, one more thing, which is that the bus drivers, I get that if they go over 40 hours, we're going to get into contractual or overtime stuff. Are there any other safety issues for them driving over 40 hours that we need to take into consideration?
So I can't address your first question, Tony, about the remote learning. I know that I think it would be a logistical challenge to do that, and I think it would be exclusionary. The second question you had about crowd control, we're going to wait on the MPA's recommendation for spectator participation. If it's held up to, if it's for local decision, then I made the recommendation during our last athletic directors meeting that we be consistent within our conference, and we treat it similarly to how we did graduation here, where maybe you get X amount of tickets per athlete. Maybe they get 1 or 2 tickets, and that would be another reason why we would have all of our field hockey, soccer, and football games within Hoke Field, because we can control, it's a gated field. We can control the number of spectators that come into our facility. So we would certainly, do that. If we were to have our games at Prey Street, or if we were to have our games for soccer, and if we were to have our games on the field hockey field, it would be difficult to maintain crowd control because it's a public street over at Prey Street. We have a parking lot here by the field hockey field, and it would be extremely difficult to be able to control the number of spectators we have at our facility. And I'm sorry, the last question about bus driving. Gabe and I have always worked extremely closely with coordinating bus drivers and juggling bus drivers to get athletes to our away sporting events. I feel that this year, with the reduced schedules and the pods that have been created, and they've been created in the sole consideration for travel, is that I feel like we'll probably use fewer bus drivers and drive fewer hours than we have in the past.
Fair enough. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, Nate, for sure.
Tony, your question about the student athletes doing 100% remote learning is something that I've heard actually several times in the last, I don't know, 5 or 6 days. And I think it's something to think about for the safety of the whole student body. There's perhaps sacrifices to be made on both sides. But we had a Saturday meeting, Maine School Boards Association, and it came up in that area because we all want to do what's best for students and all students, and health and safety is paramount. So I've heard that suggestion actually more than once, more than twice.
Can I just make one quick comment about that, Becky?
Sure.
If that's the case, wouldn't we have to do that to any high school student that has a job?
John,
I would venture to say that their risk would be higher than athletes being on the same field at a time.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm just telling you that it has come up, and I'm not, and Tony's not the first one to think of it, and it's not the first time I've heard of it. I don't have an answer about students and jobs. I'm only addressing the fact that it came up, and it's not a brand new idea. I don't have an answer for you. It's beyond my pay grade. Other questions or comments?
I actually, reading some of the emails received, I'm under the impression that the parents and the athletes will do whatever it takes to play their sport. So if that need be that they learn from remotely, I'm sure they would be more than willing to do that during their season. Just throwing that out there.
That's a thought. I don't know, Teresa. I don't have the answer to that question either.
Yeah, and I'm not prepared to answer that question. I'm not sure the impact that would have on the staff and on our remote system. So,
And the mental health of students being
Of
100%
those two.
remote. I mean, it's sort of
Right.
it's the oxymoron of athletics. You know, it's the very argument that we've been inundated with as far as having to have athletics. It would, again, we would need to be concerned about the mental health and the socialization and being with adults and being in your school. And so don't have an answer yet. Just know the question's out there.
So Nancy made a motion. We didn't get a second.
Second.
Second. Veronica's seconding.
Okay.
Board's ready to move ahead, I think.
I would say any final questions or comments from board members?
Anything else?
Hey, this
Pat,
is
do you mind
Matt.
calling the roll? Oh, Matthew, go ahead.
Yeah, I wish we had this much passion when it comes to curriculum, academics, and everything else that we have to do throughout the school year. It's just it's amazing. So thank you. I'm a sports guy. I get it. I will support sports, but even budget. I mean, we don't even have this much support when it comes to, or comments when it comes to the budget time. So
One final one, and I'll be quick. I just want to say I fully support moving forward with the sports and the MPA decision, and I hoping and praying starting an hour and a half ago that the governor's office and the state departments follow suit with that. But I'm a worst case scenario thinker, and if they say no sports for the state of Maine in the fall, I just want our board to be ready and sort of forward thinking, and that we have to offer these kids something. We can't just pull that rug up from under them and expect that they'll be fine. So just in the event that things go south for some of us, whether that's a subcommittee or just out of the box thinking of how else we can support these student athletes is going to be really important.
Nicole, we already have an athletic committee that we had created as part of the return to school plan. And so if the If everyone comes back and the ultimate decision is no, we're not going to have sports in the state of Maine, I would look to that committee to meet and to come forward with some recommendations to the board.
Okay, great. That makes me feel pinch better. Thank you.
All right, ready to call the roll, please.
All right, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony Veit,
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
All right, it's unanimous.
Great.
Can I just want to thank you guys for your support. I know that this has been a tough decision for everybody, and it's certainly weighed on everybody's minds as of late. But I think I speak for all the coaches, all the athletes, and parents of athletes, and thanking you guys for your full support. So let's keep our fingers crossed that we get approval from the state agencies and we can move forward. So thank you again.
Thank you, Nate. All righty, new business, approval of the COVID-19 staff and student handbook.
Yeah, so a copy of the COVID-19 staff and student handbooks were sent to you in the packet. I have worked with the administration. We have worked with the associations to develop the student and staff handbook. They include guidelines for how we're going to operate and function in this new COVID-19 world. And because it is something new, really thought it would be appropriate to send it to you to review and to hopefully give your stamp of approval. And I'll have to say, please be aware that this is kind of a fluid document. As guidelines continue to change from the CDC or from the Department of Education, we will need to go in and update these handbooks. So I have made sure to put a date on them, and I've tried to, if you read them, make comments to say that these may change over time depending on the latest recommendations that we do receive from the CDC and the DOE.
Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you. I think you did a wonderful job.
Thank you, Teresa. Again, it was not me. There were a lot of people involved, so appreciate it.
Can I make a motion to accept them?
Yeah.
I'll second it.
Motion from Veronica and second from Alyssa, I believe. Was that Alyssa? Yes. Okay. Would you please call the roll?
Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony Veit,
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
Great. Thank you all. That was unanimous.
Next on the agenda, the approval of the school physician, which is Gardner Family Practice.
Yes, you have to approve this every year. Right now, we've been working with Abigail Hoke, Dr. Abigail Hoke, who has been advising us through this process. But just in case she leaves, we use her, the organization as the for our records versus identifying just one specific doctor out of their practice.
I move we approve Gardner Family Practice as the school physician.
Motion by Tony.
I'll second it.
by Jim. Great. Would you call the roll, please?
Yes, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony V,
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
That's unanimous.
Great. Next on the agenda is the resolution to authorize the lease purchase of photocopiers and related equipment in the principal amount of $168,244. And you may or may not remember at our very last meeting where we were all together in one room and it was so loud and noisy in the high school gymnasium before, just at the very beginning. We talked about copy machines. And we approved that then. The copy machines are in place, as I understand it, and we need
Yes.
to authorize the lease purchase now to complete that circle of work that we began back in March. Does anyone have questions or any board members who were here then not remember? Any memory lapses? It wasn't photocopied in your mind.
I make a motion, we accept that.
Thank you, Veronica. May I have a second?
Second.
People are laughing. I love it. About time we had a good laugh. All right, then. We have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, who was the second? I heard two voices, so I don't know who made the second.
I was one voice.
Let's go with
Nicole.
Nicole. Let's take Nicole.
Okay, thank you.
You'll call the roll, please, Pat.
Yes, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall,
Yay.
Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umland,
Yay.
Tony V,
Yay.
Quentin Martin.
Yay.
That's unanimous.
Great. Next, board chair, no report. Superintendent, no report. Public comment to respond to any of the public questions.
We received a phone call from Sterling Paul, and he was asking about the soccer games at Prey Street, and we've answered that question. Or that was Jen Paul, so that's taken care of. Paula Burke called, great work, MSAD11. And Kristen Martin, hello, school board members. First and foremost, thank you for listening and caring about your community's voice. Thank you also to Pat Hopkins for making the very educated recommendation to follow the guidance of the entities who are in the trenches doing the work and resources. To all of you in this meeting right now, thank you for all of your hard work and dedication to our district. I appreciate you from a mother, a MSAD11 staff member, and a grateful community member, sincerely. Those were the comments we received during the meeting.
Great. That brings us to the end of the public meeting. And we now need to go into an executive session to discuss COVID-19 related contractual issues. So
Motion to go into executive session.
Perfect. From Alyssa, second by Tony. Questions or comments? Pat, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Becky Fless,
Yay.
Veronica Babcock,
Yay.
Nancy Fortier Brown,
Yay.
Teresa Garrett,
Yay.
Matthew Lillybridge,
Yay.
Jim Lothridge,
Yay.
Nicole Madore,
Yay.
Matthew Marshall, Patrick Saucier,
Yay.
Alyssa Tracy,
Yay.
John Umlin,
Yay.
Tony Veit.
Yay.
Okay, great. It is 7:23. Just for members of the public who are watching, there will not be any action coming out of this executive session. And for board members, you need to leave this Google Meet, and I sent you an invitation that said executive session, and you need to log into that one.
And as we're just leaving, I'd like to say thank you to the public for all of your continued support of our staff and administrators as they have tirelessly worked throughout the summer to create this back to school plan, and for your support around athletics, and the difficult conversations that we've had to have that aren't always fun or pleasant. And at the end of the day, the student lens is our focus, and the safety of our students and staff and their families, because we love our community. So I just want to thank you all for your participation, and enjoy the last few days of summer. I hope it gets warmer again. It kind of went from. So we'll see you all next time.
Hey, Pat, is there any reason to keep this open, or do we need to come back into this meeting at all?
No, click out of this meeting and log into the executive
Yes.
meeting. I sent you an invitation. Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
We'll see you there. You're welcome.